All right, yes. Okay, so our next session is with Dan Roth and Javier Cavallo Nelson, and they're going to discuss modern web development with Blazor and .NET 5.
That's right. Hi, everyone. I'm Daniel Roth. I'm a program manager on the ASP.NET team.
And I'm Javier Cavallo Nelson. I'm a software engineer in the ASP.NET Core team.
And we're super excited that .NET 5 has now shipped with enhanced support for building full-stack web apps with ASP.NET Core and Blazor. In this session, we're going to take a look at how ASP.NET Core and Blazor work hand in hand to create great modern web apps. Now, .NET has been the workhorse powering web apps from the server for many years. Many of the biggest names on the web are powered by .NET. With ASP.NET Core in .NET 5, you get unparalleled support for building web apps that are fast and secure. ASP.NET Core in .NET 5 is the fastest .NET web framework we've ever shipped and ranks in the top 10 for almost every public Tech and Power benchmark, far outperforming most other popular web frameworks. ASP.NET Core in .NET 5 also helps keep your web app secure with the latest security protocols and best practices. Now, with ASP.NET Core, you get everything you need to build beautiful web UI and powerful backend services. With the addition of Blazor to ASP.NET Core, you can expand your reach of your .NET web apps to the client. Blazor enables ASP.NET Core apps to remotely handle browser UI interactions over a real-time SignalR connection, and also to run .NET code directly in the browser using a WebAssembly-based .NET runtime. Blazor gives your .NET web apps that rich interactive feel and enables taking full advantage of the client device's capabilities. There's no need to rewrite your existing ASP.NET Core app to take advantage of Blazor. You can add Blazor components to your existing ASP.NET Core app while preserving existing functionality. So let's take a look at how ASP.NET Core and Blazor can be used together in .NET 5 to build modern web apps. Now, I have an existing web app here. Let me pull it up. This is an MVC application. It's been around for a little while. This is the Parts Unlimited app. It's basically an online auto parts store. And I've been working on it. It's got all the MVC code here. I've been updating it to .NET 5 and to use ASP.NET Core. Let me show you the running app so you can see what it looks like. You know, a pretty basic e-commerce site. We can pick an auto part that we want to buy, and then we can add that to our shopping cart. It has a little shopping cart UI. And then what I want to do is I'd like to implement the remove functionality here. Like if I click on this remove button, it doesn't currently do anything. Click, 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 doesn't do nothing. What I want that to do is to remove the item from my shopping cart. And I'd like that to happen without having to like refresh the whole page. I just want to remove this one item. Now, normally that would require me to write some JavaScript, but I'm hoping that I can do that with .NET and C# using Blazor. Javier, what do you think? Can I do this with Blazor?
Absolutely. You can just add Blazor components to your MVC or Razor Pages app.
Okay, but if I do that, am I going to have to like rewrite my entire application? I mean, I've got a lot of code here.
Yeah, no problem. You can just add Blazor components in the parts of your app where you want to add interactivity, and you can leave the rest of your app untouched.
That sounds great. Can you help me do that? How do I do that?
Okay, so the easiest way to get started is to use Blazor Server. Blazor Server runs on the server like your MVC and Razor Pages apps, but it sets up a real-time connection using SignalR so that when you want to handle UI, you can do so with remote interactions using Blazor components. In fact, I went ahead and I started setting up your app to use Blazor Server. Why don't we switch over to a solution and we take a look?
All right, let me go ahead and close this one down. I'll stop the app. Okay, let me switch to the solution you sent me. Okay, we've got Parts Unlimited Blazor Server now. And, you know, it looks the same. I see all my code here. Let me go ahead and run this. Let's see what it looks like. See how it functions. So we're kicking off a build. I can see the server is starting. Excellent. And here it is. Okay. Yeah, okay, so this looks like my app. Looks like the app looked before. Let's add a battery this time to my shopping cart. It looks like my shopping cart has disappeared, Javier.
Yeah, that's because I left the easy part for you. So I already refactored the shopping cart into a Blazor component. If you go to the Razor components folder, you'll find it there.
Oh, okay. Let me look at the code. Go back here. Razor components, and let me give a little more space. Oh, yeah. Okay, I can see all these Razor files. These, I assume, are the components. Is this one it? The shopping cart details widget? Yeah. Okay, this is my markup from before. This is what I used to have for my shopping cart. Looks pretty much the same. There's some extra component-y stuff here at the bottom, but yeah, this looks familiar. How do I add this back to my app?
Okay, so to add this component to the page, you need to use the component tag helper. Let me send you a snippet that adds the component to the page.
Okay.
You can probably go to the index view within the shopping cart folder in the views folder.
Shopping cart index.cshtml. So this is the MVC view, and I'll paste in what you sent me. And what is this doing?
Okay, so let me explain to you what the parameters to the component tag helper are. So first, we pass in the render mode, which tells the browser to start up a Blazor server application at that point in the document. Now, the next thing is the type, which is the type of the component that we want to render. The third one is the shopping cart ID, and that's an interesting one. So Blazor components are for client-side UI. So you need to think that there are things that are not available in that context, like, for example, the HTTP context. For that reason, the normal thing that we do is we grab all those things ahead of time, and then we pass them as parameters to the Blazor component. Now, the next one is the details template, and this is also an interesting one. So this is a string that we use as a template to generate links to the item details page inside the Blazor components. There are some concepts that MVC concepts that don't really make sense on the context of a Blazor application, like link generation. But one cool trick that we can do is we can pass that link to the Blazor component and then simply use a quick string format to replace the values and produce the link.
Ah, clever. Okay.
Yeah. The final one is the checkout parameter is the same thing as the details template, but it doesn't have any arguments, so we can just pass the generated link directly.
So basically, you're like grabbing all the stuff that you need the context of the request for and passing that into the component using component parameters. Okay, well, I've saved this. Let's take a look and see how it looks. And it looks like it already refreshed. And there's my items. Let me add another one. Let's add a light bulb. And boom, sweet. Okay, well, let me check remove. I'm going to click. It looks like remove still doesn't work. Click.
Yeah, that's because I wanted to show you how to handle the remove event in the component. So why don't we go back to Visual Studio and open the shopping cart details widget to see how we can implement remove.
All right. So I see the remove button right here. It looks like it has this on-click handler now.
Yeah, so that ties the DOM on-click event to the method that is being called within the Lambda. So if you scroll all the way to the bottom, you can find that method.
Ah, so it's not implemented yet. I see it right here. Remove from cart. Okay, so we should need to add some code in here.
Yeah, let me send you the code that we need to do to implement that functionality.
All right, cool. Well, I'm going to paste that in. And what's this doing?
Okay, so it's doing three things. The first thing is using a service to remove the item from the cart. That service internally uses Entity Framework to talk to the database and remove the item.
Here's the shopping cart service. Yeah, okay, I see the DB context there. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. The next thing we're doing is we are fetching the data again from the database to update the UI.
Okay.
And the final thing is a surprise feature that I built in. That is, we're notifying other components that we've removed an item from the application. So the widget on the top right level corner of the page is also a Blazor component. And when you click on an item to be removed, you'll see that the widget on top gets updated.
Oh, sweet. So this little guy up here, that's also a Blazor component. There's more Blazor components in this app than just the shopping cart. Okay, let me make sure I've saved, because I don't think I've saved yet. All right, there's doing its auto refresh thing. Boop, boop. I love the little icon in the corner. SBS, he manages that. Okay, and so now I should be able to remove an item from my cart, and I see the shopping cart updated. That's super awesome. So that little guy, that must be this shopping cart widget. Yeah, and I can see that it's using that that same notification service so that it gets the update that the item has been removed. And that must be being added somewhere in the layout since it appears up there at the top, right? It's in this top header. Let's look through the layout. I'm expecting to see a component tag helper. There it is. All right, there's the shopping cart widget. Okay, cool. So we've got multiple Blazor components in my MVC app. We did it. We were able to add some interactivity to my MVC app without having to deal with JavaScript, just using Blazor. That's super nice. I do have one little complaint, though. I did notice that if I click away and let me come back to the cart, you see that loading cart details ... It's like there's a delay before the cart actually shows up. Is there anything we can do about that?
Yes. So the way Blazor server works is Blazor updates the DOM after it has been rendered from the server. The loading cart details section that you see is displayed while the data is being loaded from the database. Once that data is available, the component renders the shopping cart details. So what we can do instead is we can pre-render a component from the server. That way, we render the content as part of the initial page render on the server. So
all right, how do we do that?
Yeah, if you want to do that, go to the index.html view on your shopping cart.
Okay.
And then change the render mode to server pre-rendered.
Server pre-rendered. Hopefully I get some IntelliSense, and I do. Server pre-rendered it is. All right.
Perfect. Now, we also need to pass down the model. We need to do an extra thing. Let me send you the snippet for that.
Okay. All right, I got it. What's this for?
Okay, so what we're doing here is we are passing the model down to the component as a parameter instead of fetching it again from the database when the application starts on the browser. That way, what we get is that we avoid having to go to the database for the data, and we skip showing that loading details component. That essentially happens on Blazor whenever you do any type of asynchronous work.
Okay, so we're basically grabbing all the data up front on the server and passing that into the component, and that will get then set up so that we don't have to load it twice. We don't have to do any async work to load the component. Okay.
Exactly. It's also important that that parameter needs to be serializable because we send it down to the client and then it sends it back to us.
Oh, so it's like persisted in the page. Like we're going to persist that parameter in the page. Okay, so let me try this now. Let me click away and come back, and boom, it just loads. It's like almost instantaneous. I'm clicking refresh, and it's fast and smooth. I love it. All right, that's really nice. So yeah, great. We were able to use Blazor Server to create my shopping cart. I have to admit, part of me is just feels a little bit disappointed. I keep hearing about this WebAssembly stuff that it lets me run .NET code directly in the browser. This is still technically running on the server, correct?
Yes. So Blazor Server has a lot of advantages. It runs on the server like your MVC or Razor Pages apps. You can reuse the same libraries and service normally. The authentication works in the same ways as for any other server rendered app. Now, that said, WebAssembly also has its advantages. You can leverage the device resources for rendering the UI. It supports the scenarios where there is no server involved, and it doesn't require you to have a constant connection between the browser and the server. However, if you factor your components well, you can use the same component on Blazor Server and Blazor WebAssembly with minimal or no changes. So the only thing you need to think about is that authoring a WebAssembly component takes a bit more work because you need to go through the API through an API to fetch or modify data, for example.
Got it. Okay, so if I want to use Blazor WebAssembly instead, can you walk me through how I would do that? It sounds like I'm going to need some sort of API and then a way for my Blazor client to then call that API, correct?
Yes. So I have an alternative version of the app that just does that. Let me show it to you.
All right, let me close this one down. And I'll grab the solution you sent me. Let me see. Okay, here we have Parts Unlimited Blazor WebAssembly now. Oh, I see we have some additional projects.
Yeah. So all of the components now live in the client project. So that's the part of the application that will be running on the browser. The other project, the shared one, contains code that is shared between the client and the server.
Okay. All right. So
Yep.
what do we have to do then to switch this to WebAssembly?
Okay, so I've also made some changes on the server to host Blazor WebAssembly in a similar way to how it's done on the template. If you look at the index.html for the shopping cart.
Okay. Sorry, not that one, this one. Still have our shopping cart view.
Yeah, you'll see that we've updated the component tag helper to render a WebAssembly component.
I see, yes. Excellent.
Okay, so do you want to try it out?
Let's okay. Yep, let me go ahead and run it. Here's the running app. All right, so let me go ahead and click on things. And yeah, it's working. Looks like I haven't had to run this before. Have a few products. Yeah, so that looks like it's working pretty good. So that must be, but this is now running on the client. So that must be calling some sort of API.
Yeah. So now that the component runs on the browser, I had to do a couple more additions to enable the component to access data on the server. So if you go to the API folder, I wrote a shopping cart API controller.
There it is. Yeah. So this is what's accessing managing the shopping cart updates now by accessing the database. So we can get our shopping cart details, we can get the summary, we can remove from cart. Okay, so here's our API. Got it. And then how are we calling this thing then from the client?
The other thing is on the program.cs, I use HTTP client factory to register a cart client, and that's what it's used to talk to the database. So if you step into the client, you'll see that it uses HTTP client.
So this is the cart client used in the client project, in the Blazor WASM project. It's using an HTTP client to call our API. And I'm guessing I should then see that someplace. Where's the component? Yeah, here we're now injecting the iCart client into our shopping cart component, and that's probably being used down here someplace to actually call the API. Yeah, there it is.
If you see, by factoring our components well, the code is almost identical to the one on the server. So it's very easy to replace one with the other.
Perfect. Okay, I get that, and it seems to be working great. I can add stuff, I can remove stuff. Now that we're running on the client, though, it does make me wonder about security. Like, how do we handle securing those API calls? In my MVC app, I use an authentication cookie from Azure AD B2C, and that seemed to work just fine with Blazor Server. But if we want to call a protected API from Blazor WebAssembly, I'm guessing I probably need some sort of access token.
Right. So there are now two application models running under the same host. The parts that are rendered on the server behave like a traditional web application. So this is, for example, the parts that are implemented using MVC or REST pages. Now, the other model is the interactive parts of the application that run on the browser using WebAssembly. Those behave more like a single page application. Now, that said, there are many ways of securing this type of application, but it is common to rely on the cookie for the parts that are rendered on the server and to use an access token for the interactive parts on the browser. Okay. In fact, I was already working on this. Do you want us to finish it together?
Yeah, I think that would be useful to see.
Okay, awesome. So let's go back to the solution. And the first thing we need to do is we need to go to the shopping cart controller.
Shopping cart controller, that'd be in the controllers folder. Okay.
Yeah. So we need to make sure that we protect the access to the shopping cart. So just
uncomment this guy right here. So we're going to have a secure shopping cart now. You have to be authenticated to see your shopping cart.
Exactly. So now we want to protect our API endpoints.
Okay.
I already set up a Microsoft Identity Web to protect the APIs using JSON Web Tokens, but we need to make sure that the action on the shopping cart API controller requires the token before doing any action. So why don't we go to the shopping API controller?
Right. I see that. It's already commented out here. I'll just uncomment these guys. So some more authorized attributes, but these are now using the JotBearer authentication scheme, which would be presumably based on an access token.
Yeah. So the next thing we need to do is we need to make sure that we only render the shopping cart when the user is authorized. So to do that, we need to wrap the shopping cart details widget. So if you go to the shopping cart in the CHTML,
okay,
we can replace that shopping cart details widget with protected shopping cart details widget.
Okay, so this is a new component There's a new piece of Blazor stuff. Where is that implemented? Okay, I see it here. It's in the client project. Okay, well, what is this doing?
Yeah, so this component does the following. It makes the authentication state of the WebAssembly app available to other components. Now, the authorized view renders two different fragments depending on whether the user is authenticated or not. If the user is authorized, then it displays the shopping cart. If the user is not authorized, it uses the authenticate component to establish the authentication state on the WebAssembly app.
Okay,
Now,
makes sense.
yeah, since we pre-authenticated the user on the server, doing this doesn't actually require the user to enter his username and password. We're just setting up the state on the browser for the JavaScript application.
Clever. So we have an authentication state on the server, and now we're establishing it on the client.
Yeah. So there are a couple of more things that we need to do. So to configure, we need to configure the client to actually be able to authenticate. So for that, we need to use the MSAL support that we ship. So let me send you a snippet with the MSAL configuration that you can put in your program.cs.
Okay. Okay, I see. That's what's going to tell this authenticate component what to do in some sense. Let me paste that. I pasted it here in program CS. So this guy. Oh, okay. So these look like the normal set of parameters that you use when setting up MSAL, right? You got your authority and client ID.
Exactly. So the last thing we need to do is we need to make sure that we actually attach the token to the request when we query for data. So for that, we're going to use the base address authorization message handler. So let me send you the snippet that adds that to the cart client. And
got it. Okay, that was a long one. Base address authorization message handler. Okay, so this is a message handler. This guy is going to handle acquiring the token and then attaching it to requests as they go out.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, should we see if that works? Okay, the app's restarted. Let me go back now. Let me go to the home page. All right, now let me try and add, I don't know, let's add a filter set to our cart. Oh, okay, so now we need to log in, right? Because this is a secure shopping cart. Not everyone can see my shopping cart now.
Exactly.
Right. Log in here. Okay, I saw a little like pop-up blip there other than my last pass kicking in, but that must be, I'm guessing that's the Microsoft Authentication Library acquiring the authentication state for the client and getting an access token.
Yep.
So all should be all set up now. Let me see if I can remove an item. I can. Okay, and just to see that that's actually doing an authenticated call, let me bring up the browser dev tools, and I'm just going to click remove. And there you can see is the API call. Let me give myself a little bit more space here. Yeah, so call to API shopping cart remove. It's a delete and then 200 OK. And the reason why it worked is because the request headers have an authorization header. And there's my access token that's being sent with the request. That's what that message handler is doing. Awesome. OK, so that's how you can do authenticated calls from the client. That makes total sense. I did notice one thing, though, Javier, like when I click away, let me come back to the cart. You see how it doesn't show up immediately again? Like, let me do it one more time. Click away, come back. It's not there, and then it's there. It looks like we have that delay back. Can we get some of that pre-rendering goodness back again?
Yes, we can pre-render a component on the server, and Blazor WebAssembly will wire up the things for interactivity on the client after the runtime is downloaded.
Okay.
So, yeah. So now we need to think about a couple of things when we do this. We need to think about that we're gonna have components running on the server and running on the client. So why don't you switch to Visual Studio and we go to the index.html and we change that to WebAssembly pre-render.
WebAssembly pre-rendered now. Ah, a new feature in .NET 5. Love it. Okay, I'll save that.
Perfect. So now, as I was saying, we now have two different implementations of the cart client, one that needs to do HTTP calls and the other one that runs on the server and can skip over all the HTTP details. So luckily, I created already that implementation. So if you go to server cart client.
Where is that? It's in the servers folder here, services. Yeah, server cart client. Ah, okay, so this is an iCart client, But this one is using that shopping cart service we saw previously, which just talks directly to the database. So it's like a server-friendly implementation.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I already registered that on Startup. And what will happen is that when the application pre-renders, it will use the server card client. And when it runs on the browser, it will use the card client that makes HTTP requests.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. So there is one final detail that we need to do here. So we need to go and we need to update our protected shopping cart details widget component.
What do we got to do here?
Yeah. So now that we are pre-rendering on the server, we want to avoid the UI flickering. So we need to pass down the model to the WebAssembly component. So we did that already.
That's this thing right here. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we also need to make sure that the shopping cart stays rendered on the page until the user is authorized on the browser. We can do this because we already authorized the user on the server so that we know the user can access this data. But the WebAssembly application takes some time to establish the authentication context and determine that the user is authorized. So let me send you a snippet that will do just that.
All right, let me grab that. So this is an updated version of our protected component. Oh, wow. Okay,
Yes.
Looks like we're rendering the shopping cart details widget a lot more times.
Yes, so what will happen is that we will pre-render the shopping cart on the server, but with the buttons to remove items disabled. And we will wait until the user is authorized on the Blazor WebAssembly application to enable them.
Okay, all right, so that makes sense. Let me go ahead and save that. And let me go back to the app. So now if I click away, it's doing its little refresh thing. We click away, let me add a new light bulb. Oh, wow. Yeah, let me refresh. It loads fast and smooth like before. And I can see that the button is being just briefly disabled before the, that's the pre-rendered version. And then when the authentication state's established, it becomes enabled. And now I can remove it. So we did it. Wow. We were able to add some client-side interactivity to my MVC app using Blazor without having to write any JavaScript. Thank you so much, Javier.
No problem, Dan. I will send you my bill.
Oh, man. Cool. All right. So just in summary, what we just saw is how you can take an existing MVC app and add client-side logic to it using Blazor Server or Blazor WebAssembly. We saw how you can improve the perceived load time using pre-rendering and how you can flow state from the server to the client. We also saw how we can make authenticated API calls from the client to APIs on our server. We hope you've enjoyed this session and that you'll try out Blazor and .NET 5 today. There are many more Blazor sessions at .NET Conf, many more today, and then a whole bunch tomorrow and on the third day as well. We thank you so much for watching, and we'll be happy to stick around to answer some questions.
All right, thanks so much, Dan and Javier. That was awesome. I think we have time for at least one question. We got a ton of questions, so let's just do that real quick. Here's one from Irakli, and they want to know, does Blazor support other WebAssembly widgets written in different languages, C++, Rust? That's a great question. So Blazor is just built on open web standards, right? It's WebAssembly, WebSockets, HTML, CSS, and Blazor supports doing interop with JavaScript. Like if you have JavaScript code that you want to bring in, you can call into arbitrary libraries. Like you may have some existing libraries that you want to reuse. So with a WebAssembly widget, I can imagine that you could try to call into that WebAssembly module using JavaScript interop. There's no like direct mode right now for calling from like the Blazor WebAssembly runtime into a different WebAssembly module. That's not a thing that exists currently, but you may be able to do it using JavaScript interop. Cool, awesome. All right, thank you again for this awesome session.